I had just gotten home after a long day at the office, tired and ready to just relax. The apartment was quieter than usual, which was a bit unusual since my mom was off and around. But today she was having a little get-together with her friends. I had forgotten about it, but when I walked in, I noticed the sound of laughter and the faint scent of wine in the air. "Jason, you're home," my mom called out from the living room, her voice cheerful, maybe a little too cheerful. She was already a bit tipsy. I walked into the living room expecting to see the usual group of her friends, but tonight was different. My mom had a few of her old college friends over, and one of them, Linda, was sitting on the couch, looking a little more lively than usual. Linda was always around, growing up one of those friends who seemed to pop in every now and then. She was fun, outgoing, and, if I'm honest, a little flirty sometimes, though. I never really thought much of it. She was a few years older than my mom, but not by much, maybe in her early 40s. As I walked in, Linda's eyes landed on me, and her face immediately lit up. "Jason, is that really you?" she slurred, standing up and stumbling slightly as she approached. I had always thought Linda was a bit too touchy when she drank, but tonight there was something a little different about her, more animated, more interested. "Yeah, it's me, Linda," I said, with a smile, trying to keep it casual. Linda, apparently already a little tipsy, squinted her eyes at me as if she were studying my face. "You've changed. You look so much older, taller too. I almost didn't recognize you." She grinned, but it wasn't the usual smile she had when she greeted me. There was something behind her eyes, some kind of mischief or flirtation, I couldn't tell which. I wasn't sure what to say. "Oh yeah, I've been busy with work, you know?" I laughed awkwardly, hoping she would just drop it. But instead of letting it go, she moved closer and gave me a hug that lingered a little too long for comfort. "You're such a handsome guy now, Jason," she said with a smirk. "You know, you remind me of someone from my past, someone I used to really like." Her words trailed off as she stared at me almost like she was searching my face for something. It felt a little weird, but at the same time, I wasn't sure if I should stop her or just let it happen. I didn't want to make things awkward, and honestly, I hadn't been in a serious relationship for a while, so a little attention, even if it was coming from my mom's friend, felt nice in a way. I don't know about that," I said, chuckling nervously. "I'm not really sure who you're thinking of." She gave me a mischievous smile and leaned in a little closer. "Oh, you'll know when I tell you." She paused clearly, tipsy, and then laughed loudly, clutching my arm for balance. I stood there unsure how to respond. Was she serious? Did she actually think I was someone else? I wasn't sure, but I didn't really want to correct her. It seemed easier to just go along with it for now. The night went on like that, with Linda becoming increasingly more affectionate toward me, even joking about how much I looked like her old crush. My mom thankfully didn't seem to notice how odd the situation was becoming. She was too busy with her own friends and Linda's advances, while strange weren't overt enough for her to realize something was off. By the end of the evening, I had almost convinced myself it was just a weird fluke. Maybe Linda had one too many glasses of wine, and she just had a habit of making things awkward. I figured I would just brush it off and let it go. But as I said goodbye and made my way to my room, I couldn't help but think about how strange it had all felt. It was like Linda wasn't just my mom's friend anymore. She seemed to see me in a completely different light. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just some harmless flirting. There was something else going on, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Little did I know that strange encounter was just the beginning. The next few days after that strange evening felt like a blur. I didn't think much about Linda's odd behavior, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. It was just a weird interaction. I told myself nothing more than a drunken mistake. I mean, she was my mom's best friend, and things like that happen when people drank too much, right? But then my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered it anyway. "Hey, Jason." Linda's voice came through the speaker, bright and bubbly as ever. "It's Linda. I was just wondering if you're free this afternoon. Maybe we could grab coffee, just catch up." I hesitated for a moment. It felt strange, but not in a bad way. I hadn't really spent time with Linda one-on-one since I was a kid, and she was always kind of fun. Still, I wasn't sure if this was some kind of joke or if I was reading too much into it. Sure, I finally said, deciding to play it casual. I've got some free time. I can meet you at the cafe down the street. Perfect. I'll see you there, she replied before hanging up. I was a little confused. Why would she want to meet up with me alone, but whatever, it was just coffee, right? No big deal. When I arrived at the cafe, I saw Linda sitting at a table by the window. She was already sipping on a latte, her blonde hair tied back loosely, and she had this relaxed, almost flirtatious smile on her face. When she saw me, she waved enthusiastically. Hey, Jason over here, she called, motioning me over. I walked over and sat down across from her. She didn't seem drunk this time, but there was still something in her eyes, something that made me feel like she was seeing me in a way she never had before. So how's everything been? Work life, all the usual, she asked, her voice warm and inviting. I nodded, trying to keep the conversation normal. Yeah, work's been fine. Busy, but that's the usual. Just trying to stay on top of things. Linda leaned in slightly, her eyes focused on mine. I've been thinking about you lately. You've really grown up, Jason. It's funny, when I look at you now, I see a man, not just my best friend's son. Her words came out softly, almost like she was confessing something. I felt a little uneasy, unsure how to respond. Was she really going there? My mind raced, but I stayed calm. Thanks, I guess, I said awkwardly, trying to steer the conversation back to something more neutral. But I mean, I'm just trying to get by. Linda's expression softened, and she gave a small, knowing smile. I get it, I do, but I can't help but think about how different things are now, how grown up you are. She paused, looking down at her coffee cup before looking up at me again. I hope you don't think I'm being weird. I just feel like I missed out on getting to know you as an adult. You're such a great guy. I wasn't sure what to make of her words. It felt like she was talking about something more than just catching up. Her tone wasn't like it used to be when we chat casually at family gatherings. This was different, more intimate, more personal. I didn't say anything at first, just letting the silence hang between us. Linda seemed to notice and quickly added, I don't want you to think I'm being weird, Jason. She stopped, seemingly second-guessing herself. Maybe I'm overthinking this. But that was the moment when I realized that Linda wasn't just being friendly anymore. There was something else in the way she was looking at me, something I had never noticed before. It wasn't just harmless conversation. There was an intensity there. You're not overthinking it, I said, trying to sound reassuring. It's just, I don't know. This is a little unexpected, but it's fine. Linda smiled again, though this time it was softer, almost relieved. Good. I didn't want to make things awkward between us. We continued talking for a while, but the whole time I couldn't shake the feeling that this was turning into something more than just a casual coffee date. Her flirtations were subtle but clear, and I wasn't sure if I should confront her about it or just let it play out. Either way, it was becoming obvious that this wasn't just a friendly catch-up. It was the beginning of something entirely different. As I left the cafe later that afternoon, I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. Linda's words echoed in my mind. You're such a great guy. I didn't know if she meant it as a compliment or if it was a sign that she was starting to see me in a way she shouldn't. The next few days passed without much more interaction, but I couldn't forget about our coffee date. Every time I thought about it, I felt a little more confused. Was Linda really after something? And what did I want from this situation? I wasn't sure. But one thing was becoming clear. Things were getting complicated, and I couldn't pretend I wasn't a part of it. After our coffee date, things between Linda and me became even more uncomfortable, and not in the way I'd expected. We didn't see each other for a few days after that afternoon, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. I kept replaying the way she'd looked at me, the way her tone had shifted from friendly to something else. The more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't just her that was acting differently, I was too. The idea of Linda seeing me like that made me feel strange, conflicted. One evening, my mom called me up to the living room. I was sitting in my room watching TV when she knocked on my door. "Jason, come on downstairs. Linda's here. She wants to talk to you about something." I froze for a second, that heart racing. I hadn't expected her to show up at my place like this, not after the last conversation. My mind was still trying to process what happened between us during that coffee date. I walked down the stairs trying to act casual, though my stomach was in knots. When I entered the living room, Melinda was sitting on the couch, sipping a glass of wine, looking perfectly at ease. She glanced up at me as I entered, and for a split second, there was something in her eyes that made me freeze. "Hey, Jason," she said with a smile that seemed a little too warm for comfort. "I just wanted to see how you were doing." Her voice was light, but there was something in the way she looked at me that told me this wasn't just a casual visit. I'm good," I replied, shifting uncomfortably. "What's up? Is everything all right?" Linda took a deep breath, setting her glass down on the table. "Actually, I was hoping to talk to you about something, something that's been on my mind since our last meeting." She hesitated as if weighing her words. I knew what she meant. She was talking about that afternoon at the cafe. I was suddenly more aware of how close she was sitting on the couch, how the space between us felt smaller than usual. "Look, Linda," I said, trying to be honest without making things worse. "I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. I'm not sure what you meant when we met up last time, but I'm kind of confused. Are you feeling something different now?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked down at her hands tracing the rim of her wine glass. Then after a long pause, she looked up at me, her eyes slightly softened. "Maybe I am. I mean, Jason, I've known you for years. You've always been like family to me, but lately I don't know, things have changed. I've seen you as this grown-up man now, and I guess I can't help but notice how you've turned into someone I could get to know differently." Her words felt hesitant, but also full of something I couldn't quite define. I felt my chest tighten, my mouth dry. This wasn't the conversation I'd been expecting. It was the conversation I'd been dreading. "Linda, you're my mom's best friend," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This just doesn't feel right." She nodded slowly, understanding but not backing down. "I know, Jason. I know. But sometimes things happen when you least expect them. Right? I don't want to make you feel pressured or uncomfortable. I just wanted to be honest with you." I didn't know how to respond. Everything about this felt so off. It was like I was standing on the edge of something I wasn't sure I was ready for. I had always seen Linda as just a family friend, a person who was older and more like a second mom. But now this new dynamic was strange, and it made me question everything I'd known about her and about myself. "Look, Linda, I'm not saying I don't care about you." I started, but my voice faltered. "But we can't just pretend this is normal. It's not. I don't think I can just ignore how weird this all feels." She sat there, her eyes searching mine for understanding. "I get it, Jason. I really do. But sometimes you can't control how things turn out. All I know is that when I look at you now, I don't see just my best friend's son. I see a man, someone I've come to admire in a way I never thought possible." She paused, almost as if she were waiting for me to say something, anything. I didn't know what to say. I was torn between telling her how uncomfortable this made me and somehow understanding where she was coming from. I was 25 and she wasn't old enough to be my mom, but the idea of crossing that line with her felt like an enormous step, one I wasn't sure I was ready to take. The conversation hung in the air, heavy with unspoken tension. Linda seemed to sense my hesitation. She leaned back on the couch, giving me space, her posture suddenly more relaxed. "I don't want to make things harder for you, Jason. I just thought I should say something. It's been on my mind, but I don't want to ruin anything between us." I nodded slowly, my mind racing. "I appreciate that, Linda, but I think we need some time to figure this out. We can't just act like nothing's changed." She stood up, walking over to me, and For a moment, I thought she might try to kiss me, but instead, she just put a hand on my shoulder, her touch gentle, almost reassuring. I'll give you the space you need, but just know, Jason, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. As she left that night, I stood by the door watching her walk down the driveway, feeling more conflicted than I had in a long time. This was a situation I hadn't expected, and now it felt like everything was about to change. But what I didn't know was just how deep this was going to go and how impossible it would be to walk away once we crossed that line. The days after Linda left my house were quiet. I didn't hear from her for a while, and honestly, it gave me the space I needed to think things through. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, her words, the look in her eyes. It wasn't like I didn't understand where she was coming from. She was a grown woman and she'd been through a lot in her life, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much this was messing with my head. I'd been raised with the belief that family friends were supposed to feel like family. Linda had always been like a second mom to me, and now she was something else. I kept trying to convince myself that it was just a passing thing, that she was drunk or lonely or maybe just caught up in a moment. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Linda wasn't the type of person to act without thinking. Then on Friday evening, she texted me. It was simple, just a "hey, you around tonight?" But it was enough to make my heart race. I stared at the message for a while before replying. "Yeah, I'm free. What's up?" "Nothing, Pa," she responded almost immediately. "I was just thinking we could talk more about last time." I didn't want to read too much into it, but I also knew what this meant. We weren't going to just let it go. And honestly, part of me didn't want to let it go either. "I'll be over in a bit," I wrote back. When I walked into Linda's house, I wasn't sure what to expect. There was a sense of tension in the air, a heaviness that made everything feel more serious than it should have been. Linda was sitting on the couch when I entered, looking calm but not exactly relaxed. She was holding a glass of wine just like before, but this time I could tell she wasn't using it to mask her feelings. She was sober, and that made everything feel more intense. "Hey," she greeted me, her voice quieter than usual. "Thanks for coming." "Of course," I replied, trying to sound casual, though my nerves were starting to get the best of me. "You wanted to talk," Linda set her glass down on the table and motioned for me to sit beside her, and as I did, I couldn't help but notice how close we were sitting. There was barely any space between us, and the proximity made everything feel wrong. But at the same time, it felt like something I couldn't ignore. "I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about the other day." She began, her voice soft but firm. "And I just want to be clear about where I stand. I know things might be complicated, but I don't want to pretend that I don't feel something for you. You've always been special to me, Jason. And now that you're older, I can't help but see you differently." I swallowed hard. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. We were crossing a line I wasn't sure we could come back from, but at the same time, I couldn't deny that a part of me was curious about where this could go. "Linda, I don't know what you're expecting from me," I said, trying to be honest without pushing her away completely. This this is a lot to process. I'm not sure if I'm ready to dive into something like this." She nodded slowly, her eyes searching mine. "I get it. I do. I'm not asking for anything to change overnight. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. We don't have to rush anything, Jason." There was a long silence, and for a moment I thought about walking away, about ending this before it went any further. But then Linda reached over, placing a hand gently on mine. Her touch was warm, comforting even, and it sent a wave of confusion through me. Was this just a moment of weakness for both of us, or was this something more? "I've been through a lot in my life, Jason," she continued, her voice low, almost vulnerable. "And I think that maybe I'm just looking for something more, something real. And I don't know if that's with you, but I want to find out." Her words hung in the air like an invitation. And despite every rational part of me screaming to walk away, a different part of me, the part that had always been attracted to Linda, was starting to entertain the idea of taking that step. "I'm not asking for anything crazy, Jason," she added quickly, as if she could sense my hesitation. "I just want to explore this with you, see where it leads." I looked at her, torn between the person I had always known her to be and the woman sitting next to me, now open, honest, and vulnerable. The lines were becoming blurry, and I wasn't sure how to navigate them. But I couldn't deny that there was a pull, an undeniable attraction that I couldn't ignore. "Okay, Mefa," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "Let's just see where this goes, but no expectations, all right? We take it one step at a time." Linda smiled, at her eyes lighting up with something I hadn't seen before, hope. "One step at a time," she echoed. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I might be stepping into something I couldn't control. That night, we didn't cross any lines. We sat together, talked about life, about things that didn't matter and things that did. But the tension between us never really left. I could feel it in the air, in the way she looked at me, in the way I looked at her. The next morning, I woke up and found myself questioning everything. Had we just started something we shouldn't have? Or was it just a moment of vulnerability between two people who hadn't expected to feel the way we did? I didn't know the answers. But what I did know was that things were never going to be the same again, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for whatever came next. It had been a few months since that night with Linda, a few months of stolen moments, quiet conversations, and a secret that felt more and more natural with each passing day. At first, I wasn't sure how it would go. I wasn't sure if I could live with a secret like this. But as time passed, I realized that it wasn't the burden I thought it would be. It wasn't a mistake or something I regretted. It was something simple. There was no drama, no one got hurt. It just was. Linda and I carried on like nothing had changed. And maybe that was the best part of it all. We didn't need to explain ourselves to anyone. We didn't need to share what was happening between us because, frankly, it wasn't anyone's business. It was ours alone. I started to look forward to the little moments, those quiet evenings when Linda would send me a message just to check in or invite me over when no one else was around. Sometimes it was just a quick drink at her house, no words spoken about the past or the future, just the present, the way we were. And that was more than enough for me. We didn't complicate things with grand gestures or promises we didn't need to make. It was all about being together quietly and without the weight of expectations. There was something freeing about it, something peaceful. For a while, I didn't even question whether it was right or wrong. It didn't feel like we were doing something terrible. It felt like we were just two people who had found a connection in a way that neither of us had expected, but both of us understood. No apologies, no explanations, just us. I think that's what made it work, the simplicity of it, the absence of any grand plans or long-term goals. I wasn't trying to build a life with Linda. She wasn't looking to rewrite the rules of our relationship. We were content with the way things were. It was like a dream, but not one of those dreams that felt impossible to keep. It was just something that fit perfectly into our lives, even if it was only for a little while. I was sitting on my couch one evening staring out the window when I got a message from Linda. "Hey, I was thinking about us," she wrote, "and I just wanted to say I'm glad things happened the way they did." I smiled to myself. I've been thinking the same thing. It wasn't a fairy tale romance or something that would end in tragedy. It was just right for us at least. "Me too," I replied. "I don't think I would change anything." Linda didn't reply immediately, and part of me wondered if that was it, that maybe it had run its course. But then her response popped up. "I think that's what makes it perfect, you know. We didn't make it complicated, we just let it be." Her words echoed in my mind, and I felt a sense of calm settle over me. She was right. We didn't overthink it. We didn't try to make it something bigger than it was. We were just two people who had shared something, and for whatever reason, that was enough. I wasn't angry or confused or sad. It wasn't like the end of a relationship where things fall apart. It wasn't a dramatic conclusion. It was just a quiet, contented feeling that settled in me, a recognition that I had no regrets about how it happened or where it went. I was okay with it, and so was she. Life continued on, and I didn't feel the need to explain it to anyone. I didn't need to tell my friends or even my mom what had happened. It wasn't for them to know. It was mine and it was Linda's, and that was enough. Sometimes in the middle of the night when everything was still, I would think about how it had started, about that one mistake, that one moment of confusion. I wondered if I'd ever be able to manage to explain it to anyone if anyone ever asked. But the truth was, I didn't need to explain it. It was just something that had happened between two people in a way that made sense at the time. It didn't need to be more complicated than that. I was happy. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had a secret that was my own, something I didn't have to share with anyone. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that's more than most people ever get. As I sat there, I realized I wasn't looking for anything more. I wasn't hoping for anything to change. I was content with how everything had turned out just as it was. And that was the quiet ending to it all, a secret that didn't need to be revealed, a moment that didn't need to be explained. It was perfect because it was ours, and that was enough. The story of Jason and Linda reveals a profound life lesson about navigating the complexities of unexpected emotions with honesty and self-awareness. Jason's encounter with Linda, his mother's friend, illustrates how quickly familiar relationships can shift into uncharted territory, challenging our preconceived notions of boundaries. His internal struggle, torn between curiosity and discomfort, teaches us the importance of listening to our instincts when faced with situations that blur moral lines. By choosing to engage cautiously while acknowledging the potential consequences, Jason demonstrates the value of respecting both our feelings and the relationships that anchor us, like his bond with his mother. Linda's vulnerability, mistaking Jason for someone else and later pursuing a connection, reminds us that loneliness can drive people to seek connection in unexpected places, but it's our responsibility to approach such moments with clarity and care. Their decision to explore their feelings quietly without disrupting their lives underscores the power of discretion and the beauty of fleeting, meaningful connections that don't demand permanence. This emotional narrative urges us to embrace life's surprises with courage, but to always weigh the impact of our choices on those we hold dear. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced a moment where emotions pushed you toward an unexpected path? Your stories connect us and enrich our understanding. If this tale resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to join our community of heartfelt storytelling. Let's keep exploring life's deepest lessons together.